We all know that today Galena, Illinois is a rural tourist destination for all Chicago people. What everyone doesn't know is that Galena was once bigger than Chicago and was a thriving commerce crossroads. So now the question everyone is asking is what really happened to Galena? The economic and historic impact of Galena's decision to deny the Illinois Central Railroad and depend on the riverboats influenced the decline of Galena and the rise of Chicago. Galena's population today, which is around 3,500 people, could be around 20 times the size of that if they would have chosen the newer transportation technology rather than depending on the riverboats so much. Galena derives from the most important form of lead. This name fits the town perfectly for its history of lead mining. Riverboats, being the most used shipping route, played a huge role for the lead mining in Galena. In 1819, Galena transported its first steamboat load of lead on the river. At that time, Galena was shipping 80% of the lead that the United States mined. George Davenport was the man that started all of this. He played a huge role in not only the first steamboat load of lead, but he also helped influence having a trading post built for the lead mining in Galena. Galena mainly shipped the lead they mined on the riverboats to other places such as St. Louis and Chicago. So not only did mining help Galena's economy and population boom, but the use of the riverboats on the Galena River, also known as the Fever River, played a huge role for Galena. During the mid-1800s, construction of the railroads began. Trains started becoming the preferred means of transportation. In fact, the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad influenced the rise of the railways. This took away a lot of the importance from the riverboat traffic. Galena, now with a big choice to make, had to decide whether to stay with the riverboats or convert to railroads. During this great decision, the people of Galena were starting to question if the riverboats would be a long-term plan or if trains were a smarter investment to venture into. One of the more prominent figures in Galena, Captain Hezekiah H. Gear, proposed to hold a meeting saying that the railroad would be more beneficial to the town of Galena. On this very controversial topic, we decided to ask a local historian and author for her opinion.
Captain Gear told him, you're doing the wrong thing. Weeds will grow in your streets and your buildings will fall down because it's just the wrong thing.
Hezekiah Gear also discovered a vein of lead ore, yielding about 26 million pounds. He mentioned how having a train run through Galena would help haul lead easier to other cities. This is where the idea of the Illinois Central Railroad came from. After deciding to rely on the riverboats, all commerce and trade started going to Chicago instead of Galena. Chicago then started becoming a major industrialized city. The river traffic was then coming to a screeching halt in Galena because the river was silting over. This is primarily because they began cutting down all of the trees along the river, so that the riverboats had fuel to run on. Dubuque and Galena have also been rivals for a long time. At one time, the people of Dubuque said that Galena's river is only good for growing potatoes in. During this time of conflict between Dubuque and Galena, a man by the name of Hempstead Washburn had his own opinion on the Illinois Central Railroad. He was a very influential figure in the decision on the railway for Galena.
So in 1851, Congress approved the funds for a railroad through the Galena area and across the Mississippi. And they wanted the terminus to be on the west side of the Galena River. And some of the people in Galena wanted to be on the east side. So they said, well, if you don't put it on the west side, then we're going to make the terminus in Dunleith, which was East Dubuque. That was the name of East Dubuque at the time. And Captain Gear was very much against it. The mayor, Hempstead, was the one that was for not having the terminus in Galena.
Before construction of the railroad began, Galena's population was around 14,000 people. Chicago's population was just a fraction of that at the time. The construction of the Illinois Central changed all of that.
Galena was almost 14,000 and Chicago was 4,000.
The Illinois Central Land Grant was the first grant to promote the construction of the railroads. This law led to the construction of the Illinois Central Railroad between Dubuque and Sioux City. On May 11, 1857, the first train traveled on this railway. Galena's population then began slowly declining. Captain Gear was very right in what he said about the Illinois Central Railroad. Although weeds and grass didn't necessarily grow in the streets, the population and some infrastructure took a toll. In fact, the DeSoto House and Hotel took the biggest hit in Galena because of the railroad not going through it.
The DeSoto Hotel, because that was built as a major hotel in the region And when they built it in 1851 to 1854, they thought they would be having really a lot of important people, and it would be really a center for the area. Of course, now Lincoln did come and stay there, and Grant used it as his headquarters for his first campaign.
The main reason Galena didn't get the railroad was because of their geographical landscape. Dubuque was a much better fit for this conflict.
There wasn't the physical room to embrace the railroad for facilities like Dubuque had.
So as Dubuque began growing, Galena continued to realize their huge mistake. The town's buildings and population took a toll. The buildings were later fixed up a little after the Depression, but their population was never able to reach its past potential. In its prime, Galena was around 14,000 people. Today it stands at about 3,500 people.
We're a victim of our geography and topography. We benefited from it early on, and then we paid the price for it later.
Galena was never the same again after the railroads were diverted around the town to neighboring cities to save time. When looking at a geographical map of Galena and its surrounding area, a site for the railway would never have been able to become accustomed to its surroundings at that time. Galena's past economy was based on their benefit of possessing a large quantity of lead. When the lead began to run out and the river began silting over, Galena began grasping that their glory days as a growing city were diminishing, and that the significance of their history could make a great tourist destination. In the late 1970s, Galena's leaders got together and decided to preserve and promote Galena's rich history as the newest economic boom. Today, over 1 million visitors come to Joe Daviess County and Galena to experience the past. It is the second biggest tourist destination after the city of Chicago. Eventually, the railroad did come to Galena. Today, the Canadian National Railway is the only railroad that goes through Galena itself, but there are many more that skirt the outside of the town. The state of Illinois is still debating about enlarging Highway 20 from a 2-lane to a 4-lane through Galena. Who knows, with this new transportation development, maybe Galena will one day rival Chicago again.